It's really interesting that as I've had an opportunity to interview different people, each one of them has a different path that they followed in order to achieve a level of awareness and love and happiness and joy that all of us are seeking. And today I'm really excited to have a gentleman on the show that has actually done some amazing things, Jonathan England. And he is actually at this point in time gone through his own personal 5 steps, written a book, If I Die Before I Wake, and talking about how we can literally be awake in this life. And then he's actually developed and created some villages where people have reached a level of awareness and understanding where they are just thriving. And so it's going to be a really interesting interview to listen to the 5 steps that he wrote about because he experienced it, and to see how he achieved the level that he's achieved and how we can all achieve that higher level of awareness and kindness and love and joy and happiness and all of those things that literally we can become if we choose to. So please stay and listen to the show. Hope you enjoy it and look forward to having you really join us with this show.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dr. Doug. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, and I'm excited. You were telling me before, let the audience know, where are you actually living right now?
I'm in Costa Rica, on the South Pacific side, close to Dominical.
Go ahead, keep going.
It's a place called Platanillo de Baru is where the little area is called.
Wow, that is fantastic. It's amazing what we can do with Zoom now, isn't it?
Yeah.
The world has just really become much smaller because of the ability to communicate and so forth. So you've written a book, and we're going to talk about that. It's called If I Die Before I Wake. And, you've got a journey that I'm sure that you have been on in order to get to the point that you got inspired to write that book. So let's talk a little bit about what your personal journey has been.
Yeah. And so, that's actually what my book is. There's 3 parts to it. There's the path, the proof, and the process. The path is the roadmap, which are these 5 levels of consciousness, or 5 states of conscious orientation, 5 ways to perceive reality. The part 2 is the proof, which is my journey through those 5 steps, my journey through the roadmap. And part 3 is called the process, which is basically the tools that I gathered along the way. I say that there's only one way to learn. It's through failure, but the caveat is it doesn't have to be your failure. You can learn through someone else's. So you'll get, here's what not to do, and here's the recipe that actually works. Don't add any of this stuff, only do this. And then this is how you can transcend each of the levels.
So what brought you to this point? I mean, what was your life journey that actually got you inspired to write the book?
Yeah, so there was a shift in each moment along the way, like how I really got deep into level 1, which level 1 is called disoriented, which is meaning you have no direction. You're just kind of like a pinball getting bounced around. It's the victim mentality mindset, which is where 90% of humanity actually is. But what really drove me into that, I mean, it's social conditioning. We're indoctrinated, domesticated to exist in level 1, because then we're slaves to the system. As long as we perceive ourselves as victims, and we're either at war with something or just feel hopeless to it, then we completely be played. But so there's all the indoctrination from every angle coming at us as we grow up in what I call the old world. But specifically, when I really went down deep into the darkness, was when I was 12 years old. My brother was 16. He died of muscular dystrophy. Now, I knew he was going to. It was a terminal disease that he'd had his whole life, but it still was it was a lot. When I'm a 12-year-old kid, I was the one in the room. My mom sent me in there and said, "Hey, go let him know that it's okay to die. He's suffering. He's in a lot of pain, and he just needs to know that it's okay to die." because he's only holding on for us. So I was this kid, and I was a highly trained hero. It was like my job to, you know, I was responsible for my family's feelings. And so here I was, I'm going in there and I go tell my brother, hey, Matthew, it's okay to die. And now underneath that robotic words that I spoke because I was supposed to, my Iron Man costume said it, but the little kid that was behind that costume was in pain. But I didn't even allow myself to feel that, because if I did, then I wouldn't be the hero. I wouldn't be doing what a good son would have done. So I completely numbed out and walled off all of my emotions in that moment. I had to, in order to say that without lying. I mean, I was still lying, but I had to lie to myself first, so I wouldn't be lying to him, you know. And it was all unconscious. I didn't know this was happening, but
right. Well, and you make an interesting point. You know, when you say there's this huge percentage of people that are living in the victim mode, what does that look like, number one, and how do you think that that's happened in this world, and why do you think it's such a big number? Because people are going to listen to this and go, I'm no victim.
Yeah, well, I always say the degree in which you're awake is the degree in which you take responsibility for your reality. So if you're 100% responsible for every aspect of everything that's going on in your reality, then you're 100% awake. If you're, how much are you blaming someone or something for something that you're experiencing? Most people are spending most of their time pointing the finger. It's Donald Trump's fault, or Joe Biden's fault, or it's the pandemic, the virus fault. It's somebody's fault for something. It's my children's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's somebody's fault. So the degree in which you're doing that, you're blaming, is the degree in which you're completely asleep. And so how this happened is because we all bit the fruit. What's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil? It's the fruit of the knowledge of good, of not enough, because all there is infinite abundance. All there is love. But we leave what's real in the pursuit of what appears to be. What you believe to be true is true for you, even if it's a lie. So we bit into a lie, and then we made the lie more real than real. And the lie was, I'm not enough, and I've got to figure out how to become enough. So what we do is we trade in our purpose, we trade in our true identity for approval, for significance, for safety, for security, for whatever it is that we think is going to make us feel better, because we don't feel like we're enough. It really hits hard. Usually somewhere between 4 and 7 is when the person all of a sudden stops being themselves. They're innocent child, heart wide open. And then somebody says something, somebody does something, and they're like, oh, it's not okay to be me. I've got to figure out who I'm supposed to be so that I can be loved. And then we build this egoic identity and don't even realize that we did it, because the whole society has programmed us to do it. I mean, the entire educational system was specifically set up in order to train people to be cogs in the machine, to be factory workers. That's literally the whole purpose for it. It was to train people to be factory workers. That's what it was created for. It's
interesting. I was just at another meeting, and I was talking about learning styles, and for people who have children that are in school or they're homeschooling, and talking about the fact that people don't realize that we're only taught one way in school. There is only one way to teach in school for the most part. And oftentimes a huge percentage of the kids that are sitting in that classroom, that's not their learning style. That's not how they like to learn. So I find it fascinating that you talk about the fact that it does happen in our childhood, where we're not good enough. I've been doing a lot. I love to study religions. And one of them I just have been recently studying is Buddhism. And it's interesting as he talks about the fact that we all are suffering. And when he says that, it's not necessarily that we're physically suffering, but that we're craving something, or we desire something that we're not getting. And when that happens, that causes us suffering. And in my mind, as you just brought this up, it really puts us into that victim mode, doesn't it?
Yeah. And as Harriet Tubman said, she's been given credit for, I've also heard people say that she didn't actually say this, but it says, she said, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves. So we're like 2 steps removed from the truth. It doesn't say your truth will set you free. It says the truth will set you free. But there's the truth, there's reality, and then there's your truth that's divorced from reality because you can't face reality. so terrified to look reality in the face because they've assigned a meaning to a moment. Like maybe you're 5 years old, this is most people's example of how it starts is more traumatic than this, but let's just use this as an example. 5-year-old kid goes and says, "Hey dad, can we go throw some baseball?" And dad says, "Oh, I'm busy, leave me alone." And the little 5-year-old kid's like, "Oh, what's wrong with me? Like, I just made dad angry. I'm so sorry." And then he's like, now if there's traumatic response, I've got to be something different than just being a kid that just wants to hang out with his dad. Now, what the little kid doesn't understand is that dad was, working 70 hours a week, giving everything that he could to give his family the life that he never had. And then he's got his wife just nagging at him. Hey, how come you don't spend any time with me? How come you don't talk to me? He's like, dude, I spend 70 hours a week working my tail off. I don't have another breath, an ounce of, I just need some rest. So a little kid can't understand that. So he made a meaning to that moment, which the meaning was, oh, God, dad doesn't love me, which if dad doesn't love me, then if he doesn't love me, then who can? Then that must mean I'm not enough. So I've got to figure out how to become enough. So again, we leave what's real in the pursuit of what appears to be. We bought into a lie and then made the lie more real than real. The truth is you are enough. You always have been. You always will be. There's nothing, you can't get any more perfect than you are already created as. But we create an illusory self and start trying to manufacture it so we can be in control of love. But you can't control love because love is all there is. How could you can control all there is? You can only control what isn't. And so the only thing we're in control of is our smallness. So we create these small selves that it's like a little puppet, but we identified with the puppet so we can try to protect ourselves from getting hurt by the meaning that we assigned to the moment. The moment didn't hurt us. The meaning we assigned to it hurt us.
Well, and I think it's really important that you talk about this reality versus perception. And everyone has a different perception of life. It is the old story of there's 4 people at an intersection and there's a crash, and when they're getting interviewed by the authorities, everybody has a different story about what happened, and yet they were all there because their perception was different based on whatever that happens to be. So when you talk about a child hears something said to them, their perception is what creates that emotion for them. And it's interesting that perception is not necessarily, quote, reality. Is there a universal reality that actually exists? And do most of us find that our perception in some way is not necessarily aligned with that reality?
Yeah, the feeling that someone is experiencing inside of themselves is the interaction of their perception, which whatever perception they formed, how it is interacting with reality. It's not the moment itself that creates any sort of feeling inside of somebody. It's the meaning they assign to the moment. And so one of the most, I guess, destructive, you could say, things that we do learn in school, and I say it's destructive, but everything washes out in the end as you get the lessons through it. You go through it. It serves a purpose. It served a purpose for us to go to sleep. We were supposed to go to sleep. We were supposed to figure out what love isn't, so we could actually turn around and really know what love is, because we are love. But how could we know who we are if all we are is us and all there is us? So we had to learn what love isn't, what love isn't. It doesn't exist. So we had to step into an illusory world so that we could actually experience what is. But the thing that we learned that's destructive, but actually served its purpose to getting us to fall asleep, was that the answers are more important than the question. That's what we're taught in school, that you need to regurgitate the answer exactly the way that you're told. If you can regurgitate it the way that you're told, then you get an A. But if you cannot say the same thing the same way that it was said, then you get an F. You're a failure. You're worthless. So it's all about cleaning the outside of the cup, leaving the inside dirty. But see, the questions are the answer. And it's like living inside of the question. Like, really great question, like really crappy questions create really crappy reality for you. Like a question like, well, why am I so stupid? Why doesn't anybody love me? I mean, you're presupposing nobody loves you. And so now you're living in that reality. Even when somebody's like shaking you, hey, I love you, you can't believe it, because you're detached from reality. Because our greatest gift is that we're always right, and our greatest curse is that we're always right. The question is, what are you right about? Something that's true or a lie? And so we perceive these realities based on lies, and then to separate ourselves, like it's our own world. We're living inside of it, literally living in our own world, detached from the truth of our oneness with all. And the truth is love's the only thing that exists.
Yeah, and that's where you found yourself in that first step as a victim, because for you it was you needed to say these things even though that's not something you necessarily felt.
It wasn't real. Yeah, I created a false reality, but it was 2 steps removed, right? Because like my brother actually told me the truth. His last words. So I said that I told him a lie. Well, it was the truth. So I actually told him the truth, that it's okay to die. That's the truth, except for I was 2 steps removed from the truth, because there's reality. It's not okay that you're dying right now. It does not feel good inside of me. And the truth is, hey, he's supposed to be dying right now. How do I know? Because he died. To argue what happened is insane. So he was supposed to die. How do I know? Because he died. So the truth is, it's okay. But I was 2 steps removed because I wouldn't let myself feel that it's not okay. And then I had to put on a mask that it is. And so it was like a reflection of the sun. It's like looking at the moon and I'm calling it the sun, but there's no heat there. There's just a reflection of the light. And so, but this is a perfect example for what I'm talking about. I assigned a meaning to the moment. I told my brother it's okay to die, which is the truth. But when I was saying it, I wasn't connected to the truth. I was detached from reality of the pain inside of myself. I said, it's okay to die. But what he said back to me was the truth. And he was connected to it when he said it. Now I heard the words, but I had no clue what he meant, because I was detached from reality. I was living in my own world. But I assigned a meaning to that moment, 3 meanings. One, that life is meaningless, because how could there be any meaning to it if my brother was only 16 years old? He was stuck in a wheelchair most of his life, and then he dies. There can't be any meaning to life. 2, that there is no God, because if there's a God, then either I did something wrong or he's wrong. And one of those two, something doesn't work. Either scenario, it doesn't work for me. So there can't be a God. And then the third thing was that I failed love, because it's like subconsciously I thought it was my job to save my brother, because my family fell apart. When I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced because they just couldn't. Life was already hard enough, and then they had a son that's going to die, and it's like too much for parents to have to look at that. And so they got divorced, and I'm like subconsciously thinking, if I could just save my brother, I can save my family. And now my whole identity was gone in that moment. And so I went into a spiral of just oblivion. I became a broke, ignorant, blackout, drunk, atheist beach bum.
So what were the words that he said to you?
So the words that he said was, John, I'm not dying. I'm waking up. He said, this world is, he's 16 years old. He said, this world is just a dream. He said, I've been stuck in a wheelchair my whole life. He had these pictures of these dolphins above his bed. He just loved dolphins because they could play. They could just jump out of the water. He couldn't jump. He'd never jumped his whole life. So he says, I'm not dying. I'm waking up. This body, this whole thing is just a dream, and I'm waking up, and I'm going to be free. I'm going to be able to run and play like a little child in heaven. And that was the truth. But because I was thinking I was this body. But how could I possibly be this body? If I'm this body, what happens when the body goes away? I go away. But that's what I thought happened to him. But when the awakening happens, you realize you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. You're not a child of time. You're a child of eternity that's hanging out in time.
And I love that, because most of us don't understand that. This lifetime is just a brief moment in the eternities of our lives. And as you say, the mortal aspect of it is just something very different. But when you think about that, and my question to you is, with writing this book and with going through those 5 steps, and we'll go on to the next one in just a minute, is it your goal to help people to get to the point where they are living life in this life and loving life in this life and waking up in this life, so that they actually truly experience a life of joy and happiness and love and freedom and adventure.
Yeah, well, that's the fruit of the book. If you, I don't specifically have a goal for it, because when you get to level 5, you'll understand why I don't specifically have a goal for it. But because it was written through me, it came through. But the fruit of it, if you get what it says, the fruit, what you'll receive is heaven on earth.
Okay, and that is possible. That is definitely possible. Let's go to step number 2.
So there I was. Now I made the decision. I assigned a meaning to a moment at 12 years old. Life is meaningless. There's no God. I failed love. With those belief systems, now I formed a new identity, and I became a broke, ignorant, blackout, drunk, atheist beach bum, because somebody who failed love is worthless. I don't even matter. And so I acted accordingly. I acted accordingly to the belief, the identity of someone who doesn't matter. And I always talk about, when it's time to get a lesson in life, it starts out as a feather stroke. If you don't get the feather stroke, it comes as a nudge. If you don't get the nudge, then it's the shove. If you don't get the nudge, then it's the cosmic 2x4 with the spikes in it that wipes your life out from underneath you. So I'm an all-in kind of guy, which also equates to stubborn. And it takes a little while to get some lessons, because I'm going all the way. Like I was literally blackout drunk 6 nights a week for like a decade. Like not just drunk, blackout drunk. Why? Because I'm all in, right? Going all the way. And so I had to get a few feather strokes, nudges, shoves, 2x4s. On January 1st at 12:15, 15 minutes after New Year's, I got a DUI. And that should have been something. Hey, John, maybe you get on a new path now. But nope, that didn't work for me. All kinds of other crazy stuff. But then August 24th of that same year, I rear-ended a car at a stoplight. Didn't even know that I was driving. I'm like, what just happened? And I'm like, oh crap, I'm driving right now. And I just rear-ended a car, and I put my truck in reverse and tried to take off, but there's a cop sitting at the stoplight, and they caught me about a half a mile down the road at a Walmart and took me to jail. And sitting in jail, I started thinking, now I can't run, now I can't hide, now I can't numb, because that's what I was using alcohol for, was to numb I was trying to keep all that pain that's been packed in, that I packed in that moment when I'm not allowed to feel anything. Like it's like tried to bubble up, but it's like my mind was just always running wild to just keep me from feeling. And the only way I could get a reprieve from my mind was to be blackout drunk. So now I can't run, I can't hide, I can't numb, and I'm sitting there with me and me. And I start talking to myself, and I hear a voice saying, John, you could have killed somebody. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm already beating myself up enough, but you could have killed somebody. I'm like, yes, I know. But now luckily nobody got hurt, but they could have. And the voice just kept saying, you could have killed somebody, John. And then suddenly something snapped. It was like, wait a minute, I could have killed somebody. Wait, I think I hear what you're saying now. And it's like this little light appeared in the darkness, and it showed up as an idea. And it was a thought, and it was that, John, you could have killed somebody. Yes, yes, I know. But listen, that means one of your actions could hurt someone. Yes. I'm like, yes. Well, if one of your actions could hurt somebody, what could another one of your actions do? Like, what could help somebody? So if your actions could hurt somebody or help somebody, that means your actions actually matter, correct? I'm like, yes. So if your actions matter, John, then that means you matter. I'm like, well, I guess so. And if you matter, John, then maybe life matters, and maybe life isn't meaningless. Like, whoa. And so suddenly in that moment, I made a new decision. As Tony Robbins says, all change, it's in the moment of decision that your destiny is shaped, and it's all change happens in an instant. And it's the instant that you make a new decision. In one moment, when I was 12 years old, I made a decision. My life went into pure hell. And in another moment, when I'm sitting in jail in the darkness, another decision. And I said, from this moment forward, every one of my decisions will help people. Never again will I take an action, will I make a decision that hurts anyone. It's only ever going to help people. And boom, I entered in level 2 that moment. Now there's still the physical manifestation, all the actions that have to come from the new decision, but it was already done once the decision was made.
Right. Good. So that's level 2. Is level 2 then making a decision to do good?
Yes, it was not necessarily to do good. That was just my decision at that moment. But the decision is, it's because level one is called disoriented. You've got no orientation, no direction.
Uh-huh.
Two is called goal oriented. This is where you've got a direction. This is where you've got a destination. This is where you've got hope. You're like, all I got to do is get there. Now, this is the collective consciousness. Like the majority of people are actually in level one, but their goal is level two. They think that's the end of the game, success. If I can just achieve the goals, if I can get this house, I can get the spouse, if I can get the bank account, of whatever the things are that we were programmed to believe was going to make us happy, that's what level two is all about, getting all those things. But you got people like Robin Williams, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Elvis Presley. They got it. They won the game of level two. They set the goals and they got the whole world to love them, except for one person. They couldn't get themselves to love themselves because level two, it's a misdirection. It's still going because you're still thinking it's out there. And so when I did level two, my goal is like, I'm going to build a family and I'm going to make them happy. Like now, I didn't know how naive that goal was back then. I didn't know that you couldn't make someone happy. I literally thought that I could make a family. I could build a family and make them happy. And I thought that was possible. And I thought that was the goal, was to make other people happy. And so I became very successful. I started with real estate investing. I found a mentor who taught me real estate investing. I mean, I had to sign up for his course. It was 10 grand that I didn't have, and I had to come up with that money. But I found the money. I signed up for the course, and I became very successful within my first 18 months. Started with no money, no credit, no clue. I'd made $400,000 within 2 years. I built a multi-million-dollar empire, and so now I'm super successful. I'm making all this money. Got buy the big house. I got a girlfriend. She got twin boys, and I got my mom in the house, and like I'm doing everything right. Yet everyone's getting more and more miserable. And I'm like, I'm doing it all right. Nobody has to work. We're all on vacations all the time. Everybody's got everything they want. Why are you all miserable? My job is to make you happy, and you're not happy, which means I'm a failure. And so I just kept trying harder and harder and harder. And I started doing all the personal development. I've now at this point, I've been like, back then it was about $300,000 I had invested in personal development in this little journey in level two, because I learned, okay, how did I make a lot of money? Well, I found a recipe. I found somebody who had made a lot of money and said, hey, how do you do that? And I paid for the recipe. So I got addicted to personal development to try to figure out how to like fix this. But the harder I tried, the worse it got. And it got all the way to the point where my mom's on hospice. The hospice nurses looked me right in the eyes and said, she's going to be dead in 2 weeks. Prepare. I'm like, what? My mom's dying. No, it can't. And my girlfriend's taking 20 Oxycontin a day. Her boys are punching each other in the face, punching holes in the wall, and they're on drugs. I'm like, I'm doing everything right. And I had one last ditch effort. My girlfriend's brother, she raised her brothers because she didn't have a dad. Her mom was an alcoholic, so she had younger brothers. She raised them, but they both got addicted to drugs. And one of them called and says, "Hey, John, I just got out of jail. I was hooked on crack. I was stealing stuff so that I could buy crack, and I went to jail for that. But I'm off of crack now. I'm out of jail, but I burned all my bridges. Can you just help me out?" And I'm like, everything's going to complete crap in my whole life. But I'm like, well, this is my last shot right here. What if I can just fix her brother? If I could do this, because now I got all the tools from Tony Robbins and all this stuff for personal development, I bet I can fix him. And then that will make her happy. That will make my girlfriend happy. That'll do it. So I put my hero cape on one last time and move him into the house in the midst of everything going to complete crap. And then within a couple of weeks, he had stole my credit card, charged up thousands of dollars, stole all my tools for rehabbing houses, and stole my truck. And I'm like, why my mom's dying? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I give up. I give up. And I laid down my head. And for the first time in my life, I said, I failed. I'm a failure. I was it ain't over till I win kind of guy. But this time I said, I failed. I'm a failure because I'd given everything. There was nothing left in me. So I had to admit defeat. But the moment that I laid down my head and said, I failed, I'm a failure, it's like instantly this weight lifts off my shoulders. And I was like, it's like this phoenix emerges from a fire. I'm like, what just happened? And what happened in that moment is everything that I thought I was supposed to be died. I couldn't be it. So I was like, well, if I'm not that, what am I? Who am I? And suddenly I was free. And that was when I entered into level 3, which is called journey oriented, where you actually make it to the present moment.
Wow.
You
Wow.
finally
That's
get here now.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. So you're there in that journey moment where you're really, discovering who you really are and who you can really become? Or is that pretty much the journey moment?
Well, so what happened? It was like an instantaneous, like suddenly I knew who I wasn't. And because I had been so hyper focused on who I was supposed to be, the goal, like all I got to do is this, and then I'll make them happy. But suddenly that whole thing was gone and I didn't have to be anybody. See, we were so trained, like, again, through the educational system, through all of our domestication and indoctrination process, that we're not loved for who we are. We're loved for what we do. And that's all of us have been trained at. You're not loved for who you are. You're loved for what you do. As long as you do enough, then you'll be enough. And so I was doing my way into worthiness. We're trying to learn and earn our way into heaven, but you can't. So I've said it multiple times already. We leave what is real in the pursuit of what appears to be. You're already there. You just can't see it because what you believe to be true is true for you, even if it's a lie. And so you can believe a lie and make it more real than real and block yourself from perceiving reality, seeing the truth that everything is perfect. We're all one and love is the only thing that exists. So what happened is that my egoic identity, that was the perceived separation from God, from love, the cage just fell apart. And suddenly I merged with everything for all of eternity. It was like, there was no longer a box I was in. I went through experience like lifetimes all at the same time. I was like perceiving reality, like just shooting in from different perspectives. I'm like thousands of years ago, I'm looking through somebody's eyes, and then suddenly I'm 500 years in the future, and I'm like, and it was just literally all of eternity I could see from every perspective, and it just like I was no longer in a box, and I merged into the oneness, and I merged into formless love. That's what level 3 was all about.
Okay, and then moving into level 4, what was that all about?
So then what happens? Most people never make it past level 1. Then if they do, the rare few that actually really start to be very successful in level 2, they if they actually do feel like succeed in level 2, they can't let it go. They don't, because they like, I won. But the thing is, what works for you in the previous level is the exact opposite. Like it's going to imprison you in the next one. So in level 2, you needed the clarity, you needed the focus, you need this no matter what. But level 3, you've got to release your attachment to outcome. That's the thing that saved you from level 1, was your attachment to outcome, the goal, no matter what. But that's the thing that's going to imprison you in level 3, is you got to release it all. And no matter what, everything's okay. And so I got to this place, like I became very spiritual. I was formless love. I didn't care about the body anymore. I wound up going from millions of dollars and a whole bunch of houses to homeless again. Like literally I got no money anymore, no car. And I remember just like walking around looking at the trees and I'm just happy. But for no reason. I just am. And so what happened next with me is then I started to move back into this perspective from the separate self perspective. But I continue to carry the awareness of the oneness. But I'm back in the body, looking from the limited perspective, and I'm starting to become aware of the body again. Like, okay, it's like I'm in this body right now, but what I started to look around, and I'm seeing all these people that are trapped inside of the cage that I just got out of. Now, I realize it's a self-imposed prison, the handle's on the inside, but they don't know that. So level 4 is called value-oriented. Now I've got everything that I've ever been looking for. I realized that it was in me the whole time. But so now level 4 is basically you start you start unlocking cages, or at least showing people where the handle is. And so you're just now waking others up, but it's just who you are. You're not doing it for any specific reason. You're not doing it to try to get anything. So level 1 is called disoriented. Level 2 is called goal oriented. Level 3 is called journey oriented. Level 4 is called value oriented. So you're just here to provide value. There's nothing to get because you're whole and complete already. There's nothing missing in you. So you just start overflowing like a fountain. And it's like, well, that's got to be the end of the game, right? You'd think that's got level 4. It's got to be it, because what better could there be? And so the next one's level 5, and it's called soul oriented. And level 5 it's the not my will but thine be done. And what happens in this is, the problem with level 4 is you can't see the picture when you're inside of it. An example would be like, let's say you're this is, just example. It's, probably not a real example, but imagine you see somebody over on the side of a cliff and you're like, oh, well, let me go help this person. It looks like they're falling. And you go over there and pull them and save them. But then once you pull them back and save them, like, all right. And now you're not doing this for any accolades. You're just doing it just because you felt like it was a good thing to do. Like they were falling and you pulled them up and you saved them. And you're like, all right, great job. No, not trying to get anything out of this. It was pure intentions. But then you look over and you see somebody falling and you realize that the person you just saved was actually trying to save somebody else. But the one that you pulled wasn't in trouble. They were holding somebody that was in trouble, and you couldn't see that from your limited perspective. You really thought you were doing something good, but you couldn't see from the limited perspective. So level 5, it's basically you're tapping into the GPS system. So it's not my will but thine be done, where now you're living life fully from you're fully embodied here on earth. You're fully aware of the oneness, and there's the connection between the two, and you're only ever listening. It's like you walk by faith, not by sight. You don't ever let your mind decide anything. You don't try to, like when I was in level 2, I was playing chess with life, and I was like, if I do this, then that'll happen. If I do that, that'll. In level 5, you don't ever do that. You just say, not my will but thine be done. Love, what would you have me do here? You don't even have to say it anymore. It just starts to happen. It's just happening. And so you're just listening. It says, seek first the kingdom, and the kingdom is within you. So you're just living in the kingdom, and you do things from the kingdom, and all of your actions are a representation of the kingdom. So the kingdom of God forms around you here on earth through your actions, but you're not doing to get anything. It's like the master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. You are being done by the kingdom. You don't do things for the kingdom. You do things from the kingdom. You don't do things for worthiness. You do things from the worthiness. And it just starts to reflect on around you, and people start to rise up.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because I guarantee you a number of the audience are not necessarily believers in God and the kingdom and the things that you're talking about. But many of them have a belief of a universal divinity. They have a belief of all these different things. So how do you explain this to people who may not have that belief that you have? And that, quite frankly, I have too. But how do you help these people to understand that there is a universal power out there, if they're able to tap into it, that literally can give them the information and the thoughts and the wisdom and the intuitiveness to know what they can do in a positive way to lift people up without necessarily being in that where you just, want some kind of accolades or something?
Yeah, so I don't really do anything for the people. It's because at this point where my specific role is to help people who love the truth, live the truth. And most people can't hear where I'm speaking from. They think, like, there's a lot of people that will think they'll think that I'm saying something from a different place than, like when we were talking about earlier about the perspective. Like people don't understand, don't see reality. They're living in a false perspective. So there's really nothing that I could possibly say for them to hear where what I'm saying is coming from until it's time for them, until it's, that's part of their journey. But I mean, I just say to people, hey, if you can just take responsibility for your reality, just handle that. Once you've got that done, all this other stuff is going to unfold. You're going to start to see the truth. I was an evangelist atheist for 20 years. Like, it was my job to convince people God wasn't real. And I was all in, dead certain about it, and I was completely wrong. And so I understand like where everybody is on the journey. I mean, there is nothing anybody could have said to me back then. If I would have heard somebody even say God, I'm like, you're an idiot. I'm never going to listen to another word that you say, which was fine because I was down in level 1. Like there's no way I could have heard what it was being said anyway. So it's just, allowing people their space, allowing people their time, allowing them to go through their journey. And when they're ready, it's like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when the teacher's ready, the student will appear. It all happens when it's supposed to happen. And so there's a number one mistake in each of these levels that will trip you up. Level 1, the mistake is caring what other people think. As long as you're caring about what other people think, then you're going to do what other people do. If you're doing what other people are doing, you're going to get what they're getting, and what they're getting ain't good. Well, good in the duality reality. So, but level 2, the mistake is lack of clarity and focus. Most people are just sitting there running around, kind of get pushed around by the world. If you don't have a vision for your life, without vision, the people perish. You don't have a vision, you don't know where you're going, then you're being played. You're conforming to the patterns of this world, whether you know it or not, which means you're getting lost in the Maya and the illusions. You're getting driven by lies and don't even realize it until you see where you're going. Level 3, the massive mistake is attachment to outcome. And then level 4, the number one mistake is giving to get. And level 5, the massive mistake is trying versus allowing. And so I got one job: stay out of the way. And that's been my job ever since entering into level 5. It's just stay out of the way. Because I can see that there's John's still here. And it's like, I can't, like, when I'm just saying John's still here, it's like he just came online when I'm talking about him right now. But it's like, I've got one job: to stay out of the way. And there's a difference between when the source is speaking through me versus mini-me, little John, the false identity that perceives reality. There's a difference when they speak. And so all I'm doing is just observing, and I can tell when John stands up. I'm like, just sit down, John, relax, just enjoy the journey, just enjoy the ride. And so he just sits back down, he just gets to enjoy the ride, and the allowing happens. And that's when it's coming from the kingdom, and it's just kingdom work.
Yeah. And you said something I think is so important. And this is something that I've talked about quite a bit, is understanding that each one of us, there's just an amazing goodness in us. There's a divinity within us that if only we would allow ourselves to tap into that, it literally will allow us to have a life that we're touching others' lives, not because we want some kind of accolades, as you say, but it's just a matter of, I'm going to move out of the way, and wherever I can touch a life and lift a life, that's where I want to be. But that comes from that sense and understanding and awareness that within each one of us, there's this incredible divinity. And so many people, as you experienced as a child, you got to the point where you didn't believe that because of the experiences that you had. And what a miraculous transition for you to be able to go through each of those steps to the point where you recognize that within each one of us, there's this divinity. And you know what? It's not easy for people to become aware of that. So I love the fact that you're talking about those 5 steps and that you actually went through them and you reached that point. And I mean, I can't even imagine if the world was full of people such as yourself that had that true believing of the divinity with each one of us. Get out of the way, and how do we just serve and help and love? What a difference that would make in this world.
Well, I live in that world now, because I live in a village where people have made the journey. They might not be fully complete along the journey, but they've at least stepped into now. The truth is, we're all in level 5 all the time, but what you believe to be true is true for you, even if it's a lie. We're so powerful. If we believe we're not, then we're not. So, but the people that are here in this village, they've all connected all the way fully, all the way down to the source. I say life is an 18-inch journey from the head to the heart, from the mind through the emotions to the heart, from slavery to freedom, from Egypt to the promised land. But so when I describe that, I use also this metaphor of you got 3 yous. There's 3 identities. There's your ideal self, which is who you think you're supposed to be, so people will love you. That's in your mind. Then here's your real self, what you're really feeling, which is your emotions. Like, I just don't feel like I'm enough. And then underneath that, so you got to take off the mask and just be vulnerable and say, yeah, I just feel like I'm too stupid, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm too ugly, whatever the thing is. And you just feel it fully. We're not here to feel happy. We're here to feel fully. So when you can feel that fully, you'll cross the river and you'll drop into the kingdom, which that's where your true self is. This is your infinite, eternal being that's perfect and pure and whole and complete, always has been, always will be. It's untouched. It's always been untouched. Like even when you've been dancing around up here in the illusions, it didn't change the truth. It only changed your experience in time, but eternity is still intact.
Okay. So we're getting real close to the end time here, but I want you to talk real quickly about your village and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so it was a vision that was given to me in 2015. Is basically I saw what was coming in my book. When you read it in my book, it talks about, and I wrote the book like 7 or 8 years ago. It was written through me while I was doing a 40-day fast, but talked about these two trains, where on one train the people are waking up, getting more connected with each other, more connected with nature, moving into unconditional love. On the other train, people are going more asleep, more disconnected from themselves, more disconnected from each other, more living in an artificial world, and more living in unconditional fear. And at the point when the book was written, the trains were pretty close, where people could jump back and forth pretty easily. That the trains have been splitting ever since. And the book was saying there's going to be a time where the trains split, where you can't get to the other train anymore. You won't even be able to see the other train anymore. So I'm birthing a new earth over here, which it's people are just living in unconditional love. They're being their true selves. They're not being false, fake, artificial world. Everything's organic. Everything's real. Everything's natural. Everything's just the way that it was, its original intent, the divine design. And the people are all like that. And so we're just here, like literally living in the Garden of Eden. And we got our own food, water, shelter, energy, community, and it's all built around this purpose. And so I always knew that this first one, this was the prototype. We finished the prototype, and then we're already expanding we got another village, and then they're just about to start expand all across the world. So as the people are staying in the old world, it's getting further into fear, more disconnected. They're going to be moving into their little 15-minute cities, the smart cities. But on the other side, the new earth people are going to be just stepping into these it's a sovereign surrender society. They're just these villages where people are just living in harmony with each other, and harmony with nature, and in an infinite abundance. Like there's no scarcity here. Like everybody's just living in abundance. It's really cool.
So here's the question, because not everybody can head down to Costa Rica and do that. Is it possible, in your opinion, for people to reach that level and live that life just where they happen to be?
Yeah, that's where it has to start. Yeah, because wherever you go, there you are. So again, seek first the kingdom, and the kingdom is within you. So you got to drop into the kingdom. And when you're in the kingdom, you're in unconditional love and peace and joy, not dependent upon circumstances and conditions. No matter what's going on around you, you're still good. At that point, the circumstances don't affect you. You actually affect them. And then to the degree that you stay there, it's going to form like a bubble around you that people can start stepping in and stepping up with you. Or you might just then be called to, go into a direction, leave where you're at. You won't really know where you're supposed to be until you get to the kingdom. Once you get to the kingdom, you might be directed to take some steps into different directions, or it might just birth around you right where you are.
But you'll know. You'll know. So how do people find your book?
You go to findyourpurposebook.com, and you can go download it for free. It's findyourpurposebook.com. You just put your name and email address. You'll get the PDF and the audio version, and free. So
it's not on Amazon.
You can it's on Amazon. It's also on Audible.
Is the Audible free? Is the Audible free if you're subscribed to Audible?
No, I think it's like $15 or $11 or something.
Okay. All right.
So if you want it for free, you can just go to findyourpurposebook.com. If you want to pay $15 or however much it is, just go to Audible, or but You're gonna
Well,
get the same thing.
Jonathan, yeah, listen, this has been wonderful, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
One thing I love about doing this show is being able to interview people such as yourself that are making a difference. And everybody has a different life experience, but ultimately the goal is to reach that point, as you talk about, where that self-awareness and that love, and where you've moved away from all of this have to and should and ought to, and really become the person that you always have been through the eternities. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And the website that you just shared, is that also where they can learn more about you and about your villages and so forth?
If you want to check out more about the villages, you can go to, this is earthwakingvillage.com, but if you go to earthwakingvillage.org, it's got a little video of our village, and you can go and,
Okay, so that's earthwakingvillage.org.
Yeah, and there's all kind of stuff on there. So
Excellent. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show. And
all right,
folks, thank you for joining us. Hope you've really enjoyed it, and we look forward to having you join us again soon.